Hello, and welcome to the Tyrrell County Public Library. I am your host, Jared Jacobo. Today we will be exploring the history of piracy and pirates in the ancient world. When I mention pirates, you are probably thinking of the pirates from the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, or historical figures like Blackbeard, Captain Kidd, or Mary Read. While you are absolutely correct to think of these figures as examples of pirates, the practice of piracy has a long history. It goes all the way back to ancient times and to places all across the globe, not just the Caribbean in the early 17th and 18th centuries. In ancient Rome, Julius Caesar was held hostage by pirates in his early political career, and then hunted them down after a ransom was paid. The son of Pompey the Great, Sextus Pompey, fought against the Second Triumvirate as the leader of a pirate fleet. Even the Scandinavian Vikings of the medieval era would be considered pirates. Vikings often captured vessels, raided the coast of villages, and usually had no legal backing by any governmental organization or monarch. These raids were strictly to gain wealth for the individuals involved. These examples of piracy are just the most well-known pirates. Pirates have always been around, and if you point to an era of history, there are likely pirates. So, what constitutes a pirate? First, it is not an identity, but rather an illegal profession that uses violence or the threat of violence to achieve financial gain. When you turn to a dictionary or an encyclopedia about piracy, there are a few definitions. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines it as any robbery or other violent action for private ends without authorization by public authority, committed on the seas or in the air, outside the normal jurisdiction of any state. Merriam-Webster states, piracy is an act of robbery on the high seas. Dictionary.com states, a pirate as a person who robs or commits illegal violence at sea or on the shores of the sea. Wikipedia provides a larger definition of piracy. An act of robbery or criminal violence by ship or boat-borne attackers upon another ship or a coastal area, typically with the goal of stealing cargo and other valuables. The common thread between these different definitions of pirate and piracy is the use of violence to rob people at sea or along a shoreline. It is important to note that pirates are not funded or supported by governing bodies, and they are therefore committing acts outside the law. Furthermore, a pirate uses the high seas, or, in modern cases, air travel, to commit illegal acts in areas that have little governmental oversight, or they even use these areas to hide from the law. In its simplest definition, a pirate is a robber at sea or along the coast that hides from the law using sea travel. With this in mind, it opens up piracy to basically all of human history. Essentially, when people made boats, took to the sea, and started transporting goods, piracy was not too far behind. In this video, we will explore the history of some of the earliest recorded pirates in all of history, the Sea Peoples. The Sea Peoples lived over 3,000 years ago in what is today the modern East Mediterranean. These original pirates not only stole ships and cargo, but also they had armies that raided and sacked cities. Their impact on the ancient world was so great that they were some of the main contributors to the event known as the Bronze Age collapse. During this time, entire civilizations and empires that were hundreds of years old fell apart in a matter of decades. What followed was an era known as the Ancient Dark Age, where the historical record went silent for 3 centuries, and long-inhabited cities were entirely abandoned. Before we plunge into who these people were, we must understand the world they were a part of, and why their presence contributed to one of the most destructive declines in human history. From the year 3000 to 1200 BCE, mankind had established its first complex literary societies and created elaborate trade networks, stretching from modern-day India to the Italian peninsula, and perhaps even to modern-day England. This time period saw the creation of the pyramids of Giza, the events of the legendary Trojan War, and was when the events of Genesis took place. While the first millennia of the Bronze Age was a time of god-kings, conflicts, and legends, by the year 2000 BCE, diplomacy became the weapon of choice, and trade became the engine that ensured relative peace between major powers. Major players during this time included the ancient Egyptians, the Hittites, the Assyrians, the Mycenaeans, the Cyprians, the Minoans, the Harappan civilization, and several others. As the era's name implies, the use of bronze was the cornerstone of each empire and civilization that inhabited this time period. Metallurgy was new, and humans could reliably melt and smelt copper and tin to create tools, weapons, and other products. The durability and reliability of bronze created an economic need in every civilization. While copper was relatively easy to find, tin was a rather rare metal, and it is not evenly distributed across the globe. Its value was as great as gold and other precious metals. At the time, tin could be found reliably through trade from what is today Afghanistan, as well as a small mining operation in what is today modern-day Turkey. Now, this mining operation was not large enough to supply the needs of the Eastern Mediterranean, so really trade was kind of the only option. Some historians argue that it was possible tin could have found its way from Western Europe. There is some evidence that suggests tin reserves in what is today northern Spain, Brittany, France, Cornwall, England, and southern Germany might have been mined at this time. However, there is nothing definitive to support this claim, as these parts of Europe were still semi-nomadic and prehistoric. This being said, there was some tin mining activity dating back to the Bronze Age. One piece of evidence is the sky disk of Nebra, that was located in Nebra, Germany in 1999. The metal, when scientifically analyzed, dates back to the year 1600 BCE, and it seems to be made of tin that was mined in Cornwall, England. What this tells us is that the tin reserves as far as England were being mined and smelted into bronze. Furthermore, the metals were being traded with the rest of Europe, and they could have made their way to the Eastern Mediterranean. In any case, whether or not the trade network of the Bronze Age made its way into Northern Europe, the reach of Eastern Mediterranean trade was vast. As a result of this reach, civilization in the Eastern Mediterranean had a standard of living that was similar to the commodified access of our current globalized society. If you lived as a commoner in the ancient Egyptian city of Memphis, it would not be uncommon to eat grain that was grown in Mesopotamia, wear jewelry mined from India, own a bronze sword that contained tin from Afghanistan, and drink wine that was fermented in Crete. All these goods, by the way, were relatively affordable. What brought this age of prosperity to an end is still not fully understood by historians and archaeologists. The best running theory paints a complex picture of multiple disasters, external pressures, a breakdown of the economic system, and climate change. Over the course of 50 years, the Eastern Mediterranean experienced a wave of near-constant earthquakes and seismic events that caused the destruction of many cities, especially in what is today modern-day Turkey and Greece. Additionally, a 300-year arid period started a few decades before the start of the collapse. This change in climate caused the failure of crops and a multi-decade drought, thus causing famine and starvation. The scarcity of resources halted the complex trade network and caused civil unrest as resources became scarce. The Sea Peoples, a moderate and manageable threat in prosperous times, were the straw that broke the camel's back for many of these civilizations. Now that we have laid the groundwork for this period, let's ask, who were the Sea Peoples, and where did they come from? Aside from eventually becoming pirates, they were a collection of tribes and people groups from across the Mediterranean. In several inscriptions, from Egypt from 1210 BCE to 1100 BCE, a varying list of tribal names are given when referring to countries of the sea or from their isles. These include Shekelesh, Denyen, Ekwash, Luka, Peleset, Sherden, Teresh, Jeker, Weshesh. The clearest description of these invaders and where they might have come from is the mortuary temple of Ramses III at Medinet Habu, which describes the invasion of the Sea Peoples in 1178 BCE. The foreign countries made a conspiracy in their lands. All at once the lands were removed and scattered in the fray. No land could stand before their arms, from Hatti, Quod, Carchemish, Arzawa, and Alashia on, being cut off, destroyed at one time. A camp was set up in Amuru. They desolated its people, and its land was like that which has never come into being. They were coming forward toward Egypt, while the flame was prepared before them. Their confederation was the Peleset, Jeker, Shekelesh, Denyen, and Weshesh, lands united. They laid their hands upon the land as far as the circuit of the earth, their hearts confident and trusting. Our plans will succeed. Essentially, the Sea People are foreigners that come from islands and, in other texts, northern lands. Thus, they are migrating from the periphery of civilization and taking cities as they move. Where they exactly came from is not too clear. Many historians theorize that the linguistic similarity between names of current places and the tribes, Shekelesh and Sicily, and Sheridan and Sardinia, for example, indicate where they might have come from. Again, this is only a theory, but what is certain is that many of these tribes were from islands in the Mediterranean that were not only within the territories of the Bronze Age empires, but also outside their domains. Other tribes are referred to as northern and perhaps came from mainland Europe. What is most interesting regarding the Sea Peoples is their presence in the Bronze Age empires before the beginning of the collapse. In 1274 BCE, 75 years before the start of the collapse, the Luka and Sheridan tribes were fighting the Egyptians as allies of the Hittite Empire in the Battle of Kadesh. This indicates that at least some of the Sea Peoples were regularly interacting and trading with the cities of the eastern Mediterranean. It could be that the Sea Peoples helped facilitate trade across the Mediterranean and even into mainland Europe. Thus, these groups could have served as the liaison between the civilizations of West Asia and the pre-literate peoples of Europe and the Western Mediterranean. Why the Sea Peoples decided to attack has become clearer in recent years. Using pollen samples from the time period, historians have determined that not only were the eastern Mediterranean empires experiencing severe droughts, but also in mainland Europe. Famine might have driven the migration of people living in mainland Europe to travel south. As for the tribes within the sphere of the Bronze Age civilizations, they might have felt the immediate impact of the famine and experienced an immediate drop in trade. Since their livelihood depended upon the movement of goods, and they knew a number of other tribal groups in need, that the Sea Peoples decided to turn to sacking cities and trying to settle into the lands of the Bronze Age civilizations. Mycenae in Greece, the Hittite Empire, Cyprus, and Egypt, already suffering from famines, civil unrest due to a shortage of resources, and a damaged infrastructure from seismic disaster after disaster, were unprepared for warfare. Within a matter of few decades, each civilization fell to the invaders. In letters sent from Amurapi and Ugarat, located on the coast in modern-day Syria, the invasion of the Sea Peoples and the ineffectiveness of the empire's defenses are made clear. My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. My cities were burned, and they did evil things to my country. Does not my father know that all my troops and chariots are in the Hittite country, and all my ships are in the land of Lycia? Thus the country is abandoned to itself. May my father know it. The 7 ships of the enemy that came here inflicted much damage upon us. The enemy advances against us, and there is no number. Our number is pure. Whatever is available, look for it, and send it to me. And behold, the enemies oppress me. But I shall not leave my wife and my children before the enemy. And if the Hittites mount, I will send a message to thee, and if they do not mount, I will certainly send a message. Our food in the threshing floors is sacked, and also the vineyards are destroyed. Our city is destroyed, and mayest thou know it. The only civilization to survive the invasion was Egypt. At the Battle of Chios in 1178 BCE, the Egyptian army of Ramses III repelled the Sea Peoples. It is because the Egyptians were able to weather the storm that we have details of the Sea Peoples and to which tribes they belonged. The beginning of piracy did not happen gradually, rather, it started with a boom and pushed the collapse of Bronze Age civilization, transforming civilization into something different. While the collapse was a human tragedy, civilization came back within a few centuries. From this rebirth came classical Greece, with the ideas of democracy and the foundations of modern philosophy. The Persian Empire emerged from the ashes and reconnected the East and West. The foundations of the modern world came out of the ancient Dark Age. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed this exploration of the past. We hope to see you next time at the Tyrrell County Public Library.